UK police fake stats to deny Jews to a football game. Intifada merchandise for sale on the internet. Emergency Aliyah simulations. Trouble in paradise for Australian Jews. And what does it actually mean to trust God? Stay tuned for all this and more in this week's edition of Israel Matters. I'm your host, Stephen Briggs. Before we get into today's headlines, I wanted to let you all in on some big news for Israel Matters. Our brand new website is officially live, so you can visit israel-matters.com to see it for yourself. And a generous supporter of the ministry has pledged to match gifts up to $10,000. So now is the perfect time to double the impact of your gift to help make it possible for Israel Matters to continue to make truthful biblical content. As we approach the end of 2025, we would love for you to consider supporting the work of Israel Matters with a tax-deductible gift in the USA, and a monthly gift would be a wonderful blessing to make sure that we can continue this into 2026. If you're donating from the UK, you can find information in the description of this episode about how you can donate too. Well, on Wednesday, at the time of recording this episode, Israel is preparing to receive the body believed to belong to a slain hostage. According to the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem, forensic tests will be done to confirm the identity of the deceased. As the holiday season approaches and shopping is in full swing, All Israel News reports that just when you thought you'd heard it all and seen it all, a shocking development leaves you incredulous, revealing just how far mankind has sunk in a relatively short period of time. Did you know, friends, that it's now possible to purchase Intifada merchandise online, courtesy of eBay and Etsy? Yes, they have the latest in anti-Semitic fashion and matching accessories, and their stock of shirts includes such shocking slogans as "Death, Death to the IDF," featuring a skull and helmet with a bloodied Israeli flag riddled by a bullet, "Faces of terrorists," as if you'd want to wear that on your shirt, but seemingly there is a market demand for it, "Resistance is justified when people are occupied," "Globalize the Intifada," "Long live the Intifada," "Intifada in our lifetime," "Resistance until reclamation," "Generation after generation until total liberation," and, of course, expletive Israel. If that wasn't enough, posters with people in mask keffiyehs, sweaters, stickers and bags are also available. And I've seen merchandise on Facebook Marketplace that is advocating all of this as well. All this despite the company policies which supposedly ban promotion of anything that would further violence. eBay has an even stricter policy which rejects offensive materials against listing or providing content that promotes, perpetuates, or glorifies hatred, violence, or discrimination. Wouldn't that cover all of the above merchandise, which is a walking advertisement for real genocide? Apparently, money talks, and to the extent that there is a bustling market for these items, apparently company policy will have to take a back seat. So forget about Etsy's prohibitions of selling things that are inconsistent with their values, because a clamoring public will always come first. But these two juggernaut companies are not the only ones engaging in this despicable market, which reduces people to human billboards, furthering attacks targeting one particular ethnicity, the Jewish people. A quick Google search will reveal other distributors, including Intifada Collective, Intifada Apparel, Redbubble, Netwalker 13, the Electronic Intifada, Manto, No Gods, No Masters, Loving Squad, Bodez Art, Amazon UK, Arabian Vibes.shop, Neon Nile, and too many others to continue listing. In short, the internet is flooded with unprincipled, conscience-lacking, greedy companies, organizations, and individuals who hate Jews enough that they are willing to sell their souls for the hard cash that is pouring in through these massive sales. Sadly, we have returned to the darkest times of history, when unrestrained hatred took hold of the hearts of men, stirring their imaginations to come up with the most heinous and wicked ways to torment those they refuse to tolerate among them. For those reading this shocking article where it outlines this, it's important to know that you too are an important part of the marketplace. Your voice needs to be raised loudly so that these vendors can hear another side, the one which champions decency, tolerance, and right thinking. The well-known saying, bad things happen when good people remain silent, could not be more appropriately applied to another situation than this. There is always money to be made from doing evil. Those professions have been around forever, dealing in the injury, torture, or debasement of others. They were spoken of in secret for fear of anyone admitting to engage in such scornful behavior. But today, there are people who are eager to advertise themselves along with their genocidal wares to the public, taking full responsibility for their evil as they happily cooperate with a metastasizing madness which has taken over our society. And if that doesn't shock the conscience, then nothing will. The depth of depravity is on full view as we see just how far the hatred has spread. How soon will it be before this merchandise is commonplace, worn by those who go food shopping or to the mall or to the cinema, the theatre? The message is loud and clear. Nothing is off limits when it comes to the level of contempt that is being hurled at God's people and God's land. This is a raging battle between the forces of good and evil, if ever there was one. Those who supported this corrupt evil will have aided and abetted the moral decay which has invaded planet Earth, hastening our own destruction. Because what starts with Jews does not end there. People who are able to see fellow humans as those deserving of death merely because of the blood that runs through their veins will always move on to the next despised group. There is no doubt that this is only the beginning. Because as this takes off, it will not only be effective in sending the messages of hate, but it will also normalize those sentiments. May the good Lord Almighty have mercy on us and save us from ourselves. I'd encourage you, friends, to take a few moments to contact the customer services of Amazon, eBay, and Etsy to let them know your concerns about these products that glorify violence, hatred, and terrorism. We took time last night to do so, and I'd love to encourage you to do so as well. Well, in other news, a comment that we hear a lot is that America should not be sending so much money and foreign aid to Israel. Recently, Amir Tsarfati of Behold Israel addressed this issue with a video about the benefits that America reaps from its alliance with and investment in Israel. He starts out the clip by saying he is not America first or Israel first, but God first, which is an important distinction for all of us as believers to make. Let's watch some of what he has to say together.
A former U.S. Air Force intelligence chief once said that the value of intelligence America gets from Israel on Russian weapons, on terrorism, on enemy tactics, would cost Washington the equivalent of multiple CIAs to reproduce. Even if he exaggerated, even if it's worth only one CIA, that's already far more than $3.8 billion a year.
The budget of the CIA, to the best of my knowledge, is about $15 billion annually. So let's assume that General George Keegan exaggerated, and Israel does not contribute the value of 5 CIAs, maybe only 2 CIAs, maybe only 1 CIA. It's already almost 5 times the value of what is called erroneously foreign aid to Israel.
And remember, most of that money is spent back in the United States, in American factories, on American planes, paying American workers. That is not foreign welfare. That is a high-yield American investment. Now let's talk about the military side. The late General Alexander Haig, former NATO commander and U.S. Secretary of State, once described Israel as America's largest aircraft carrier that doesn't need a single American soldier on board. Think about that. If Israel did not exist, and if the U.S. wanted the same level of deterrence against Iran, Russia, China, and jihadist groups in the Middle East, America would need to send extra aircraft carriers, extra ground divisions, and billions more dollars. Not to mention risking thousands of American lives.
General Alexander Haig, Supreme Commander of NATO and later on the U.S. Secretary of State, when he was asked, how come you're so hot about Israel? Because Israel is the largest American aircraft carrier. If there were not Israel in the Middle East, then the U.S. would have to deploy few more real aircraft carriers, few more ground divisions, all of which would have cost the American taxpayer anywhere between $15 and $20 billion annually. So all is spared by one Jewish state.
Because Israel is there, strong, motivated, and constantly on guard, the U.S. can project power in the most dangerous region on Earth without permanently parking tens of thousands of troops there. That is America first. Fewer body bags coming home. Less money burned on endless deployments. Now, the technology. Israel was the first to use the F-15, the F-16, and later the F-35 in combat. For years, Israeli pilots have flown them under real do-or-die conditions. Every day, Israeli pilots and engineers send feedback to the American plants in Missouri and Texas that build these jets. That feedback turns into upgrades, improvements, and 10 to 15 years of research and development saved for American companies. One manager called it a mega-billion-dollar bonanza. So the result is simple. America sells better planes, beats Russia and China in the global arms market, and supports American jobs in the process. Again, that is America first. And it's not only military. From high-tech to cyber, from medicine to agriculture, hundreds of American companies use Israel as an innovation engine. U.S. and Israeli scientists work together on treatments, technologies, and solutions that end up saving American lives in American hospitals. Once more, that is America first. Finally, there is the strategic picture. Israel stands between dangerous regimes and America's pro-US Arab partners like Egypt, Jordan, and the Gulf states. Those countries don't work with Israel because they love Zionism. They work with Israel because they see the Jewish state as their best insurance policy against Iran and radical Islam. When Israel is strong, the region is more stable. Oil shipping lanes are safer, and the US is less likely to be dragged into another Middle Eastern war. So when someone says, "Why are we helping Israel? We should focus on America first," here's the answer. America is focusing on itself when it supports Israel. For a $3.8 billion investment, the US receives intelligence worth far more than the cost, military upgrades that saves lives and money, a stable Mideast without US troops on the ground, and roughly $48 billion in economic returns through defense contracts, technology, and pharmaceuticals. That is not Israel first instead of America first. That is America first with a powerful ally at its side.
And so he summarized very well some of the key components. People have been arguing over this America first and what that really looks like and how that looks like internationally. And of course, he stated that actually America is being strategic in its relationship there, that it is America first. Of course, as he began that time that you didn't see, if you want to see the full video, you can see it in the description below. He talks about God being first over and above America first and Israel first. And that, of course, is our necessary position as believers. Next, let's check on the status of the 7-war front. And arguably it could be 8 war fronts because the media is the 8th war. But almost 2 months have passed since the ceasefire in Gaza was declared based on Trump's peace plan. What is Israel's situation, therefore, on the 7 fronts? Have those 7 fronts been resolved? And where are we headed as we look down the barrel towards 2026? Well, let's have a brief look at the situation on all 7 fronts as it currently stands. Firstly, the Gaza Strip, the Central Front. Well, Hamas was defeated militarily, but its rule has not been toppled, and it continues to govern harshly over 2 million Gazans in the western Gaza Strip, beyond the yellow line. All living hostages have been released. Most of the fallen hostages were returned, except for 2, and of course, one of those may be have been released today. We'll wait and see how that plays out, and whether it is Staff Sergeant Ran Goyli or Thai citizen Susisak Rinlak of blessed memory. Gaza receives about 600 trucks of food and humanitarian aid daily, an oxygen pipeline for them. No construction materials, engineering equipment, or caravans are allowed in. The Rafah crossing remains closed. Phase B of Trump's plan has not yet begun. The yellow line, as a result, is becoming a de facto border given Hamas's refusal to disarm or relinquish control. This temporary situation may become long-term. Secondly, we have Lebanon, which is currently a main front. It's for the past year, Israel has conducted a one-sided offensive, killing hundreds of Hezbollah operatives, including senior figures such as Hezbollah's chief of staff, Abu Ali al-Tabatabai, last week, and striking infrastructure mainly in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah, at this present moment in time, is not responding militarily, but is rebuilding its capabilities and openly refuses to disarm. The Lebanese government is powerless to enforce the disarmament plan it approved 2 months ago, and they, of course, have just had the Pope visit them in the past few days as well. Hezbollah's launch capabilities are far lower than before the war, but still troubling for Israel. Another main front, Iran. While in the 12-day war, Israel heavily damaged Iran's missile arsenal and nuclear program, but the regime's desire for revenge remains strong. Book of Esther is reminiscent in that regard. Israel's conduct in the war, its results, and US involvement at the end strengthened deterrence, but did not stop Iran from preparing for the next conflict. Iran retains launch capabilities that concern Israel and is trying to rebuild its air defense network. Iranian officials say they drew major lessons from the war. As long as the current regime stands, motivation to act against Israel will persist. Incidentally, they are going through quite a large drought at present as well, which is affecting the economy and affecting all areas of Iranian society. Yemen is the 4th front, the Houthis. And it's defined as a secondary front. It's not a primary priority at present for Israel, because since the Gaza ceasefire, the Houthis have halted fire, they've stopped attacking ships, and they've stopped launching missiles and UAVs at Israel. Their rule, however, remains intact, and their military capabilities continue to develop. Their strategic position on a global shipping lane gives them significant power even with relatively simple weapons. They threaten to resume attacks if Israel violates the ceasefire. Another secondary front is Iraq, and the Iraqi Shiite militias played an active role until the ceasefire with Hezbollah about a year ago. They launched dozens of UAVs at Israel, one of which hit a base in the Golan and killed 2 IDF soldiers. They have also launched about 20 cruise missiles. These militias still hold sizable UAV and cruise missile arsenals and may join future fighting, though US pressure on the Iraqi government currently restrains them. They have not been militarily defeated. The West Bank, so-called, is another secondary front, and over the past 2 years, the IDF has conducted aggressive counter-terror operations, including clearing and demolishing major refugee camps that served as terror hubs. About 1,000 Palestinians have been killed, thousands wounded, and thousands arrested during this period. Terror activity in the West Bank has dropped dramatically, however. Smuggling of money and weapons and coordination with outside terror elements still fuel motivation for attacks, but the operational capability is far lower than before. And then the 7th front, Syria, is also considered a secondary front at this present moment in time. The main event occurred a year ago when the Hezbollah ceasefire took effect in Lebanon. Abu Muhammad al-Jilani succeeded in a swift, wide-scale operation to topple Assad. The regime that enabled Iranian presence collapsed and was replaced by a Sunni Muslim regime aligned with Turkey, promoting an anti-Israel agenda tied to the Muslim Brotherhood. Well, in other news, and I mentioned the Eighth Front as well, of course, in the media, what is being put out and how that is being challenged and being made aware is a front that Israel is learning how better to combat in that space. And as we mentioned last week, in last week's episode about X and what has taken place in the revealing of those that were purportedly from Gaza and those that were purportedly from Israel as well in this conflict, were actually nowhere near in a lot of the cases, and we're reporting from places such as Nigeria, the Netherlands, the UK, all over the place, where those accounts have been exposed. Well, I wanted to also give you an update on a topic we covered last month. You may remember how West Midlands Police banned Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from a match against Aston Villa, citing a secret intelligence report that has since been widely discredited. It seemed like a bad move to me at the time, and now the truth of the matter is coming out into the public square. Dutch authorities, including the Justice and Security Inspectorate and Amsterdam Police, have contradicted claims that Israeli fans perpetrated large-scale violence, noting instead that they were often the targets of anti-Israel agitators. Critics, such as the MP Nick Timothy and several journalists, accused the British police of fabricating or exaggerating evidence, possibly due to political pressure from local officials seeking boycotts of Israeli teams. Footage from the match day shows hostile attitudes towards Jews in Birmingham, with some locals openly supporting the ban and expressing anti-Semitic sentiments. The controversy has prompted parliamentary questions, investigation, and demands for full transparency, with calls for accountability from the police, council, and national authorities. Additional reporting shows that Dutch officials did not recognise the alarming figures cited by West Midlands Police, further deepening concerns about misconduct or ideological influence. Let's watch a clip from JTV where Ollie Anisfeld goes into more details about what has taken place.
So this story is both shocking, disturbing, and yet unsurprising, all in equal measure. You may recall a few weeks ago that the West Midlands Police, which is a regional British police force, determined that they were not going to permit Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from going to the game against Aston Villa because they said they couldn't guarantee their safety, effectively banning Israeli and Jewish supporters. It was appalling. But Nick Timothy, former, I think he was a special advisor to Prime Minister Theresa May and a Conservative Member of Parliament, has now published the secret West Midlands Police intelligence, quote-unquote, report used to justify banning the Maccabi Tel Aviv supporters. He's also publishing other material that contradicts the police intelligence. Let's have a look at what he's said. A reminder, Birmingham Council's Safety Advisory Group banned Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from the match against Aston Villa. They did so on the back of this West Midlands Police intelligence report. But that report has since been widely discredited. A report by the Dutch Justice and Security Inspectorate contradicted West Midlands Police. There was no deployment of 5,000 officers, no evidence that 500 to 600 fans intentionally targeted Muslim communities, nor of people thrown into the river, because that was what they based the decision on, that we're told, that what happened in November of last year when there was that match in Amsterdam and there was all these problems that occurred, the violence that occurred, actually largely anti-Israel activists targeting the Maccabi supporters. Then, in the Sunday Times last weekend, the Dutch police laughed at West Midlands Police. Sebastian Major, a spokesperson for Amsterdam Police, called the claims of West Midlands Police in its intelligence report and public statements not true. The police are accused of fabricating evidence and lying about it. There are two possible explanations. One, the police genuinely feared disorder, but wanted to blame Israelis and Jews, not the Islamist agitators and local thugs who hate Israel and Jews. Two, the police felt political and social pressure from those who want to ban and boycott all things Israeli. That was the original demand of the local MPs, a so-called Gaza Independent MP, and at least two councillors on the Safety Advisory Group. The WMP intelligence report bears some resemblance to this research report by the Hind Rajab Foundation. The foundation claims it laid the groundwork for the police. Its chairman, Diab Abu Jahar, is a former Hezbollah fighter. To get a flavour of what things were like, even with no Israeli fans, watch my video from the day of.
Just invited them to express their opinion, and they started calling me a dog. Why do you think I'm a dog?
Officer, can you take this dog away?
I haven't done anything.
Go away.
War crimes?
Yeah, they serving the idea. The idea, I never heard that being said. So I feel like you're just saying that to manipulate.
The left say there aren't any no-go areas in our country, but tonight, Birmingham, our country's second biggest city, and the place where I spent my childhood, is becoming a no-go area for Jews. Aston Villa in the Europa League tonight played Maccabi Tel Aviv, and after a very nasty campaign by Islamist thugs, Maccabi Tel Aviv supporters have been banned from attending the game. Our activist councillors like Wassim Zafar and Mumtaz Hussain got to ban Israeli Jewish football fans from the city. And West Midlands police went along with it. They said it was for safety reasons, but it was an admission that they can't protect Jews in Britain from Islam and thugs on our streets.
I think it's just very sad.
Yeah, I think it's disgraceful that we've brought sectarian religious politics to second city of the UK.
Yeah.
That we're essentially banning people because of nationality, and by de facto because of their religion, that they're Jewish.
You think you have a right to Chapman-Stein test of the IDF?
That's the idea. I never heard that being said. So I feel like you're just saying that to manipulate the media.
Right, you did so.
I feel like people like you come here intentionally to cause trouble.
No, really?
Man,
You think I'm
remember
causing
this?
trouble?
You guys are here. You lot know Libya. You lot live in probably your country areas and
Really?
that United and posh areas.
Really?
You lot cause a problem for our families who live and reside here. You know what I mean?
Well, I've got a season ticket here, and I went to school up the road, actually, so I have every right to be here.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So we got the same right.
How do you feel about Jews being banned from coming to the game this evening?
I feel like those fans that got banned, probably it's good they got banned.
You feel what?
It was good that they got banned from coming.
Yeah?
Definitely.
So you feel proud that Jews aren't allowed to come to a football match in Birmingham?
I'm glad they got banned because if they came here, they would have 100% caused problems. And if they caused problems, we would have had to defend ourselves.
There's something really strange going on in Aston at the moment. Even the estate agents have their posters up with Palestinian flags, saying state agency done differently, with a Palestine flag and some Arabic writing.
Well, we think it's absolutely disgraceful that we have a team that is actively engaging in war crimes. A team.
The team is engaged in war crimes?
Yeah, they serve in the idea.
The footballers are all engaged in war crimes.
Yeah, I mean, they serve the IDF. The IDF has been, as you know, for the last 2 years and beyond, for 77 years actually, as a state and their gangs have been committing war crimes non-stop. And to be a citizen of Israel, you have to serve in the IDF. You have to basically swear on the oath to or pledge allegiance to the devil, to the Zionists.
So by that logic, you're saying that any citizen of Israel should not be welcome in Britain?
Well, yeah, especially if they're engaged in war crimes. I mean,
I'd encourage you to find the full video about this issue. The link is in the description below, and you will be able to see it in its full entirety for this episode. It is heartbreaking and disgraceful to see the anti-Semitic trends in the UK, and we need to be prayerfully and carefully responding to this. Anti-Semitism has been called the oldest hatred and has caused issues in so many nations around the globe. Well, in other news, this past week, November 30th marked the annual date that Israel designates to remember the expulsion of Jews from Middle Eastern countries, tying it to the Arab rejection of the 1947 UN partition plan and the violence that followed. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu emphasized that Arab states forced out their long-time Jewish populations, often through pogroms, while seizing their property. Widespread anti-Jewish riots erupted after the UN vote, including deadly attacks in Yemen and the destruction of Jewish homes and synagogues in Aleppo. Personal accounts, such as that of Omri Schwartz, highlight the near-total disappearance of once thriving Jewish communities like Iraq's, which dwindled from tens of thousands to only a handful today. Despite the significant number of Jewish refugees, their story has received far less international attention than that of Arab refugees. From the 1948 war, a disparity underscored in statements at the UN Human Rights Council. Yet some Middle Eastern Jews have preserved cultural connections to their countries of origin, with Moroccan Jews in particular serving as a cultural bridge following renewed diplomatic ties between Israel and Morocco. While more mass immigration of Jewish families to the Holy Land is anticipated in the future from other countries, perhaps because of what we've been talking about in the earlier parts of today's show. And as the Aliyah Return Center explains, Aliyah is the Hebrew word for ascent, which comes from the same Hebrew root as the word la'alot, which means to ascend, or ma'alot, as in the Psalms of ascent. That's Psalms 120 to Psalm 134, which are the psalms that were recited by pilgrims on their way up to Jerusalem for the great feasts. Today, in modern Hebrew, Aliyah is used to refer to Jewish persons returning home to their promised land in Israel from the nations where they have been scattered. He or she is going up to Zion, fulfilling the many prophecies in God's word. A typical prophecy of that sort is found in Amos 9, verse 14, where it says, "And I will bring again," notice, not I will bring again, meaning they have been brought back before, "I will bring again the captivity of my people of Israel, and they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards and drink the wine thereof. They shall also make gardens and eat the fruit of them." That is something that has happened in our generation. Vineyards have been rebuilt, the wine is being drunk, and there is gardens, and there is abundant fruit and vegetables, which is a delight. Aliyah means the physical return of the Jews to their land, the restoration of that land, and the rebuilding of the Jewish nation in the land of Israel. The Jews refer to it as Eretz or Aretz Israel. When God repeats himself and says something more than once in Scripture, we want to take note, because it clearly concerns something of special importance to him. And God, in his word, declared his intention to bring his people home from all the nations where they were scattered. How many times? Have a guess. 64 times in the word he talks about them being gathered from all the nations where they were scattered. The J-Post reports that the Israeli government recently held a war game type simulation to prepare for emergency Aliyah, where they are preparing for the worst case scenario. This is fascinating. The Aliyah ministry conducted a war game that simulates the emergency immigration of 45,000 Jews fleeing a collapsing country, testing plans for 800 arrivals daily for 2 months. And in their simulation, they imagined that a country is collapsing. The economy is in shambles, the security situation has deteriorated due to widespread riots as residents seize what they can, and the 45,000 Jews that reside there are at risk. The hope for these beleaguered diaspora Jews, which means the Jews that are dispersed abroad, is to flee to Israel, but airports will cease operation in 24 to 48 hours as utilities such as the electrical grid fails. This was the scenario that was facing the Assembly of Representatives from major government, non-profit and national organizations in Ramla on Thursday, planning and simulating the emergency immigration of 800 people a day for 1 to 2 months. This is not a hypothetical, to Aliyah Minister Ophir Sofer, who said that emergency mass immigration was something that historically was likely to occur, particularly with global levels of anti-Semitism rising. This is not a new thing. Think back to the Exodus from Egypt and other exoduses from Babylon as well, but now they are actually talking this through. And at the Israel National Resilience Institute, the Aliyah and Integration Ministry and National Emergency Authority, NEMA for short, conducted its Raise the Aliyah banner exercise in preparation for mass Jewish immigration spurred by serious anti-Semitic or destabilization incidents. The simulation explored every point in the Aliyah process at every level of the plans, down to minute details, gaming how every plan could be disrupted by reality. Aliyah Ministry Director General Avichai Kahana pressed ministries and authorities as they presented their systems and procedures, challenging and prodding them about possible gaps, like a general in a military war game. So representatives were pushed to adapt as new developments and scenarios tore holes into their plans, and the overarching objective forced them to think beyond their own organization's responsibilities and how they would work together. Kahana said during the exercise that gaps in plans and interagency cooperation were more important to address than polishing established solutions. "Is there a plan for this?" was a common refrain, as proctors attempted to push representatives beyond mere assumptions that any action would be smooth without prior consideration. At 4 tables, the representatives were divided into task forces for solving the problem of the 4 stages of immigration: extraction from abroad, reception in Israel, short-term housing, and long-term absorption were the 4 key areas or stages of immigration they were looking at. With electronic systems failing, the Jewish agency would need to work physically within the community to coordinate with new immigrants. Those with houses in danger would need to be evacuated to a staging ground. But until they were ready to depart, it would be more efficient for residents to utilize the resources in their home. The agency would need to organize food, medical attention for the wounded, and transportation. Emergency budgets would need to be set aside for food and other necessities. Since, in this worst-case scenario, airports are closing, the agency would need to transfer the Jewish refugees to neighboring countries to fly them out. And Kahana challenged how the Jewish agency would transport them. The worst-case scenario was with their own cars, but they proposed that they would utilize the Jewish community's school buses. Kahana asked how long it would take to start moving the refugees into bordering states. He received an answer of a 12-hour window. The task force had to be ready to receive the first plane within 24 hours. Another problem that was soon raised by Kahana, a preamble for a running theme at the exercise, was the need for information and data sharing. The Jewish agency was reminded that this would not be a normal, orderly Aliyah in which everyone had filed their documents. These people would be fleeing with what they could, and documents could be forgotten or left behind. So the agency had to make sure of who it was bringing into the country. A hypothetical 73-year-old man didn't have his birth certificate. Kahana asked, "What do you do?" The foreign extraction team suggested that any other identification could be used, yet they might not have any identification at all, leading to another gap that needed more consideration. When they broke from the simulation for team discussions, Kahana also demanded a more coherent data collection plan from the Jewish agency. "Everyone is coming. In 4 more hours, we need to have data for the reception at Ben Gurion Airport," said Kahana. The failures of the October 7th war served as a warning for Nima and the Aliyah minister's own planning ambitions, and Kahana explained to the journalists that the lack of data about Israeli internally displaced persons meant that the government didn't have a full grasp of who was seeking haven at hotels and who was migrating place to place. There was no sharing of data on the refugees by the authorities. The logistical problems mounted when government bodies needed to ask those at the hotels what their names were or what room they were in. It wouldn't be enough for the Jewish agency to state that it would transfer an Excel sheet with the details on the emergency immigrants. Simulation proctors pushed the agency to already decide in advance what categories would be needed. Representatives called every party to determine what data they needed to be collected and how it could be shared. It was suggested that a shared emergency dashboard be created to ensure universal accessibility and interoperability by the task forces. So once Ben Gurion Airport received the emergency immigrants, another common issue was raised: manpower. The airport's authority had a few dozen reception personnel per shift, and they could lengthen their shifts in an emergency situation. But Kahana reminded that the emergency period could last up to 2 months. A few dozen was not enough. Ben Gurion's representative suggested calling up past employees so they wouldn't need to be trained. The proctors were positive towards this, but it wasn't enough to just have the idea. A call-up list needed to be created, if you like, a reserves for the airport. The airport wouldn't be the only organization that would face a strain with an increased workload, and they would also need to find the solutions. Shirut Leumi, the National Service volunteers, were proposed as reinforcements. But Kahana noted they were a middle timeline stopgap, not an immediate solution, as they would need the training in order to carry out the job. It was suggested that other ministries be prepared to lend bureaucrats during the emergency period. More information technology specialists would be needed, one representative noted, with a need for documentation and data becoming all the more vital. Other specialists, such as translators, interpreters, or administrators who speak the language of the collapsing country, would also need to be reserved in advance. New scenarios were introduced to throw the planners off guard. So people were wounded in riots, and anti-Semitic incidents, and the health ministry would need to be looped in to determine their needs. Disabled and special needs people would also need to be considered. Children could be arriving without guardians, so it was suggested that a network of social workers be on standby. At first, the problem of pets was laughed at, but an animal welfare representative noted that when Jews were fleeing the Russian invasion of Ukraine, there were families that stayed behind with their pets because the flights didn't have the correct facilities to transport them. Once those animals arrived, they would need to be fed. The next challenge would be habitation. 300 apartments were available at absorption centers, and 500 more housing clusters could be used, but the apartments needed to be renovated, and furniture and other necessities would be needed. Together they could house 1,000 people. Leaning on a tactic for housing of October 7th, internally displaced persons hotels were suggested again, with tenders for special rates from the tourism ministry. Kahana argued that experience from the war showed that they were a temporary solution, and they wouldn't want people stranded there for more than a month. It was also suggested that the kibbutzim and moshavim might be able to provide ready housing. An education ministry representative seemed to solve the problem by proposing that school, government, and hotel auditoriums be used to house refugees. Kahana requested that these new ideas be operationalized with prepared lists of institutions that could be enlisted. Basic needs would need to be met for those in temporary housing. According to the simulation organizers, problems that arose during the war needed to be solved now rather than on the spot, be it laundry, food deliveries, or domestic violence issues. The education ministry representative told the Jerusalem Post how it was necessary to provide programming and services to the refugees to set order to their days. Children would need daycare or babysitting so that parents could have flexibility to deal with administrative issues. The gap in preparation that most worried Kahana wasn't the emergency period, but the long term. We are really good in emergencies. Even after 2 weeks, they will be fine. They will be embraced. They will have a place to sleep and a place to study. The children will have educational frameworks, said Kahana. Now, the emphasis will be on acting quickly in emergencies, and everyone is running on adrenaline. What happens after 2 weeks that the media no longer refers to it, no longer comes to cover it? The simulation prepared not just for a catastrophe like a coup in a country with a large Jewish population, but also for the day after. Sofer told the Post that Israel had seen 3 recent periods of emergency that required policy shifts to address Aliyah and housing: the coronavirus pandemic, the Ukraine-Russia war, and the October 7 war. In 2022, 75,000 immigrants arrived at once. The Aliyah ministry had developed its own plans, but Kahana said it needed to be changed into a national plan. Israel is the home of the Jewish people, said Sofer. Home is the first and foremost thing, and we are prepared for any such scenario, and we will always be happy to welcome them. Isn't it interesting to get a peek into the strategic planning of the future of Aliyah? And sadly, we're in a generation where this kind of preparation, these thoughts and these processes need to be put in place. Well, one country that may be seeing a large influx in Aliyah in the near future is Australia, as many Australian Jews say the country has transformed from what once felt like the Golden Medina, which is the Golden Country, into a place of growing danger following a large, sharp surge in anti-Semitism. Since the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, the ECAJ, and other Jewish organisations began recording data after the October 7, 2023 war outbreak, anti-Semitic incidents in the country have reportedly increased by as much as 700%. Synagogues and Jewish institutions in major cities like Melbourne and Sydney have been targeted, while individuals and Jewish-owned properties have faced vandalism and violence. Many Jews in Australia say the sudden increase in hostility was preceded by accusations labelling Zionists, and by extension many Jews, as complicit in alleged war crimes, which helped legitimize anti-Semitic sentiments in public discourse. Despite these developments, community leaders contend that the government has not responded forcefully enough. They call the official reaction inadequate, given the severity and scale of the attacks. As a result, many Australian Jews now live with fear and disillusionment, and warn that what once had been regarded by survivors of the Holocaust and their descendants as a sanctuary no longer feels safe. Is this a pattern that we're seeing throughout the world? Well, as we look towards an uncertain future in our nations, it is important to have our trust rightly placed on the unchanging, all-powerful God of the universe, as so much about the situations we face in life can be broken and completely out of our control. And so it's important for all of us to explore the question, what does it really mean to trust God? What does it really mean? Well, that's our Hebrew word for today's show, and that word is batach, trust. This word encapsulates the idea of clinging to, or even being welded to something else. The family of words from which batach originates also includes trust, safety, security, confidence, and even, wait for it, watermelon. Found in Numbers 11, verse 5, this word avatiach and its linguistic link to clinging, trusting, provides us with the visual imagery of a fruit that is connected to and nourished by the vine. When we trust in God, we are clinging to Him to be sustained and helped like fruit on a vine. I love that Hebrew often gives us a concrete visual picture, a word picture if you like, within the family of words based on their shared three root letters that helps us to better understand the abstract words in the same family. For example, the Hebrew word for hope, tikva, is related to the one for sturdy, strengthening rope, and the Hebrew words for faith and truth are related to the word for supportive pillar. Do we trust, friends, that God is sovereign, faithful, and good? Are we connected to Him? Well, Psalm 9 verse 1 says, "Those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you." What we believe about God has a direct effect on how we firmly are able to trust Him. We can confidently rely on someone whose character we know and respect. We should never believe anything bad about God. Sometimes we believe a lie that God doesn't care, or that God is not able to help us, or not willing to help us or protect us, or that God holds us disapprovingly at a distance, or that God is punishing us for sin that He has already forgiven. Those lies need to be rooted out and rejected. The truth is that God has shown Himself throughout all of history to be faithful, reliable, unchanging, slow to anger, and full of compassion. Psalm 86 verse 15 says, "But you, O Lord, are a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness." It is very difficult to surrender any control to someone who you do not trust. Often, we have tactics for controlling our circumstances or other people, but God calls us to lay these down. And instead we should cling to the Lord in loving obedience, asking for His guidance and relying on His help. We can swap our attempts to manipulate others for spirit-filled self-control. A person who is controlling of others is repulsive, but a person who exhibits self-control is admirable. Yes, we do have God-given free will, which is a gift as well as a blessing. But what if we willingly surrendered our rights back as Jesus did in the Garden of Gethsemane? Not my will, but yours be done. What if we, like Abraham, did not judge with our own eyes, but leave our future in God's hands, acknowledging that God's view is better than our own? I'd encourage you to go and read Genesis 13, where Abraham looked to the Lord. Do you really trust God? Is God able? Is God willing? Is God faithful to do what He has promised to do? If we believe the answer is yes, then following Him, as risky and uncomfortable as it may feel sometimes, is a privilege. Psalm 143 verse 8 says, "Let the morning bring me word of your unfailing love, for I have put my trust in you. Show me the way I should go, for to you I entrust my life." Whatever our season of life, friends, all we can do is to live faithfully one day at a time, clinging to him as the true vine. Let's open our Bibles and read together John 15, verse 1 through 14. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit he takes away, and every branch that bears fruit he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, bears much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch, and is withered, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire, and it shall be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, so you will be my disciples. As the Father loved me, I also have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. You are my friends, if you do whatever I command you. We can have confidence, friends, as we rely on God because of God's unchanging, excellent character. We cannot know all that is ahead, but we can trust the heart and wisdom of the God who is taking us there. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments on today's show. Take a moment to like, subscribe, and share. It really does help us get the message of Israel Matters out further and wider. Let's stand together and use our voice and influence to combat anti-Semitism and to point people to the Lord and to his word. Visit Israel Matters, israel-matters.com to learn more and to donate to help make this listener-funded show possible. And remember that this week, all gifts up to $10,000 will be matched, which means your contribution can have twice the impact. Gifts in the US are tax deductible, so it's the perfect time to consider year-end giving. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Israel matters to God and should matter to us as Christians. I'm Stephen Briggs, and this is Israel Matters.